Now, Buddy and I just got through stomping the hell out of Terry.
Having a bad attitude can wreck a career, and no one proves that better than Butch Reed. His run-ins with management, unprofessional behavior, and arrogance toward fans all piled up until they became too much to handle. In the end, it wasn't just bad luck. He ruined his own career. Butch Reed's wrestling career was filled with talent, controversy, and missed opportunities. He had the skills and the look to be a bigger star, but his attitude often got in the way. There were reports of friction with wrestling promoters, most notably Bill Watts, which played a big role in his departure from certain wrestling organizations. His reputation for being difficult to work with followed him, and even his own manager in WWF, Slick, admitted that Reed could be unprofessional at times. One of the biggest what-ifs of Reed's career was his rumored shot at the WWF Intercontinental Championship. There were plans for him to win the title, but due to concerns about his reliability, those plans were scrapped. This was a huge missed opportunity, one that could have cemented him as a top-tier star. But this wasn't the only time Reed's actions created controversy. Back in 1983, during his reign as the Mid-South North American Heavyweight Champion, he made a bold, some might say arrogant, move. He let the fans pick his next challenger, with the overwhelming favorite being the legendary Junkyard Dog. But instead of honoring their choice, Reed ignored them completely and gave the title shot to Magnum TA instead. That decision backfired in a big way. Magnum TA ended up defeating Reed and taking the championship. Then there was his run in the WWF, where he took on the natural gimmick, dyeing his hair blonde in what was supposed to be a move to make him stand out. Instead, it became one of the more questionable character choices of his career. Many fans and critics saw it as a misguided attempt to elevate his status, and it didn't quite click the way he had hoped. Unfortunately, in his later years, Reed faced serious health issues. In early 2021, it was revealed that he had suffered 2 massive heart attacks. These complications eventually led to his passing on February 5th, 2021, at the age of 66. On top of that, he had tested positive for COVID-19 about a month before his death, adding another layer to his health struggles. Despite all the drama, his talent in the ring will never be forgotten. Trained by Ronnie Etchison, he made his in-ring debut in 1978, wrestling under the name Bruiser Brody, before eventually adopting the famous Hacksaw nickname. He quickly made a name for himself in the wrestling world, proving he had both the skills and the presence to become a star. By 1980, Reed had already won his first championship when he and Jerry Roberts defeated Mike George and Bob Sweeten for the NWA Central States Tag Team Championship. Though they lost the titles to the Kelly Twins in January 1981, this early success helped put Reed on the map. The following year, he found more gold when he and Sweet Brown Sugar won the Florida version of the NWA North American Tag Team Championship, defeating Dory Funk Jr. and David Von Erich. These victories showed that Reed was a rising force in the business, someone who could hang with the best and deliver top-tier performances. During the early 1980s, Reed became a regular in the NWA, competing in its St. Louis, Florida Championship Wrestling, and Georgia Championship Wrestling territories. He quickly gained respect as a powerhouse in the ring, and on April 7, 1982, he took on Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in Miami, Florida. That match would go down in history as the first ever 5-star rated match by wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer. Even though Reed didn't walk away with the title, his performance solidified him as a serious competitor. Reed's momentum only grew when he joined Bill Watts' Mid-South Wrestling in 1983. Now known as Hacksaw Butch Reed, he entered the territory as a tag team partner for one of the biggest stars at the time, the Junkyard Dog. But things took a dramatic turn when Reed found himself in a heated battle over the Hacksaw nickname with Jim Duggan. At the time, Duggan was a villainous member of the Rat Pack, alongside Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne. The two Hacksaws clashed multiple times, with Duggan using every dirty trick in the book to get the upper hand. Their rivalry lasted until Duggan eventually turned face, which led to an unexpected shift. Reed, feeling overshadowed, turned heel. Reed made his intentions clear in a dramatic television segment where he declared, "Butch Reed is going to start looking out for Butch Reed." This statement led to a confrontation with JYD in the ring. What started as a war of words quickly escalated into a physical altercation when Reed attacked JYD. Ted DiBiase soon joined the beatdown, cementing Reed's transformation into one of the top villains in Mid-South. Reed's heel turn led to one of the most controversial moments of his career. On July 16, 1983, he won the Mid-South North American Heavyweight Championship, and he confidently defended it against JYD in the months that followed. Then, in a bold and somewhat arrogant move, Reed decided to let the fans choose his next challenger for the title. The options were JYD, Jim Duggan, Crusher Khrushchev, and Magnum TA. The fans overwhelmingly voted for JYD, but Reed had other plans. Ignoring their decision, he declared that neither JYD nor Duggan deserved a shot, and instead granted the opportunity to Magnum TA. That choice backfired when Magnum ended up defeating him for the championship. However, Reed wasn't done yet. Just 12 days later, Nikolai Volkov took the title from Magnum, creating even more chaos in the division. Despite losing the North American title, Reed's success in the tag team division continued. On the same night he lost the title, he teamed up with Jim Neidhart to defeat Magnum TA and Jim Duggan for the Mid-South Tag Team Championship. Reed's time as a double champion didn't last long, though. The North American title was eventually returned to him after Mid-South officials ruled that the original match against Magnum TA wasn't legal since the fans had chosen JYD. But that reign was short-lived as well, as he lost the belt in a controversial match where Dusty Rhodes served as the special guest referee. With his focus now on the tag team scene, Reed and Neidhart defended their titles against all challengers. When Magnum TA and Mr. Wrestling 2 stepped up to challenge them, Reed and Neidhart decided to up the stakes. They demanded that Mr. Wrestling 2 put his mask on the line. The match took place inside a steel cage on Christmas night in 1983, and in the end, Reed and Neidhart lost, costing them the championship and causing friction between the two partners. This led to a short but brutal feud between them before Reed moved on to other rivalries. One of the most intense feuds of Reed's career was against Terry Taylor. Their battles throughout the spring of 1984 were crucial in establishing Taylor as a rising star in Mid-South. The rivalry expanded when Nature Boy Buddy Landel joined forces with Reed, leading to several heated tag team encounters. Reed also made headlines for his violent attacks on Taylor, often using a coal miner's glove to gain an advantage. However, Reed's attention soon shifted back to his old enemy, the Junkyard Dog. Their long-standing rivalry took another shocking turn when Reed and Landel attacked JYD while he was wrestling under a mask as Stagger Lee and painted him yellow. This act of humiliation led to several brutal matches, including dog collar matches that kept fans on the edge of their seats. Just as the feud was reaching its peak, JYD abruptly left Mid-South for the World Wrestling Federation without informing Bill Watts. This left the promotion scrambling to find a replacement, leading them to bring in Master G to take JYD's place. Unfortunately, the Reed versus Master G feud never gained much traction, forcing Watts to rethink his plans. Reed's next major storyline saw him rejecting an offer from General Skandor Akbar to join his stable. When Buddy Landel presented Reed with a golden Rolex, claiming it was a gift from Akbar, Reed angrily stomped on the watch and started a brawl. This defiant act turned him into a fan favorite, and when Jim Duggan came to his aid against Akbar's army, Reed was fully established as a hero once again. The two Hacksaws joined forces against Akbar's stable, but Reed eventually ran into an unstoppable force, Kamala. After suffering repeated defeats at the hands of the Ugandan giant, Reed quietly left Mid-South. After a brief run in the American Wrestling Association as Jimmy Garvin's bodyguard, Reed returned to Mid-South in 1985. He quickly regained the North American Championship by defeating Dick Murdoch and later went toe-to-toe with Ric Flair in a famous one-hour time limit draw for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. His final major feud in Mid-South was against Dick Slater, who used underhanded tactics to take the North American title from him in early 1986. Following his departure from Mid-South, Reed returned to Kansas City's NWA Central States Territory, where he initially teamed with veteran Rufus R. Jones. However, he soon turned on Jones and aligned himself with manager Slick. After a brief rivalry with Jones, Reed moved on to a hard-hitting feud with Bruiser Brody. Their battles were some of the most brutal of Reed's career, But it all came to an end when he lost a loser leaves town match to Brody. Soon after, both Reed and Slick left the territory, setting the stage for the next chapter of Reed's wrestling journey. As part of his new persona, he dyed his hair blonde and became the natural Butch Reed, a flashy update of legendary wrestler Sweet Daddy Sicky. Right away, he was thrown into a feud with Tito Santana, a frequent target of Slick's trash talk. Reed made his pay-per-view debut at Wrestlemania 3, where he picked up a victory over Coco Beware, a solid start to his WWF run. With that win under his belt, Reed set his sights on the Intercontinental Championship, which was held by Ricky Steamboat. He wrestled Steamboat at house shows and even on an episode of Wrestling Challenge, proving that he was a legitimate contender. But instead of getting a serious title push, Reed was soon entangled in another storyline. In the fall of 1987, the WWF heavily promoted a rivalry between Reed and superstar Billy Graham, a former WWF champion making a comeback after hip surgery. The plan was for Reed to feud with Graham, but Graham's injuries were too severe for him to wrestle. So instead, Reed and his new stablemate, One Man Gang, attacked Graham in a brutal beatdown that forced him into permanent retirement. This led to Reed facing off against Don Morocco, who had come to Graham's aid. Their feud played out in the first ever Survivor Series, where Reed was part of Andre the Giant's team, while Morocco replaced Graham on Hulk Hogan's team. However, Reed didn't make much of an impact. He was the first man eliminated, courtesy of Hogan himself. The trend continued at the inaugural Royal Rumble in January 1988, where Reed once again found himself eliminated first. Then came WrestleMania 4, where he competed in the tournament to crown a new WWF champion. He went up against Macho Man Randy Savage in the first round, dominating most of the match. But in typical Reed fashion, he let his arrogance get the best of him. While taunting Miss Elizabeth, Savage's manager, he took too long climbing the ropes. Savage seized the moment, slammed Reed off the top, and finished him off with his signature elbow drop. That loss marked the end of Reed's time in the WWF. Shortly after WrestleMania 4, he and the company parted ways. Slick stayed behind, while Reed went in search of new opportunities. Reed resurfaced in Jim Crockett Promotions as Hacksaw Butch Reed, immediately reigniting his old feud with the Junkyard Dog. He was briefly managed by J.J. Dillon before being sold to Hiro Matsuda's Yamasaki Corporation. Despite being a well-known name, Reed struggled to gain momentum, with his biggest early match being a loss to Sting at the Chi-Town Rumble in February 1989. Things took a turn when he joined forces with Ron Simmons to form Doom, a masked tag team managed by Woman. Their debut at Halloween Havoc 1989 saw them pick up a big win over the Steiner brothers, thanks to a loaded mask headbutt. But despite their strong start, Doom quickly hit a rough patch. They competed in a round-robin tag tournament at Starrcade 1989, finishing dead last without scoring a single win. Woman soon abandoned them, and their luck didn't improve. They lost a high-stakes match to the Steiners at Clash of the Champions 10, forcing them to unmask. Oddly enough, losing their masks turned out to be the best thing that could have happened. Reed and Simmons ditched the secrecy, embraced their power, and became one of the most dominant teams in WCW. At Capital Combat 1990, they finally got their revenge on the Steiners, winning the WCW Tag Team Championship. From there, Doom ran through the competition, taking on top teams like the Four Horsemen. Trouble was brewing. At Clash of the Champions 14, Doom lost a non-title match to Sting and Lex Luger. The tension between Reed and Simmons was becoming obvious, and at Wrestle War 1991, a miscommunication cost them their match against the Fabulous Freebirds. Afterward, Reed snapped, attacking Simmons and officially breaking up the team. With manager Teddy Long in his corner, Reed battled Simmons in a brutal cage match at Super Brawl 1, which Simmons won. That marked the end of their rivalry, and soon after, Reed left WCW. He returned briefly in 1992, teaming with the Barbarian and Cactus Jack. He even picked up a big win at Clash of the Champions 20, defeating Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham. But by the end of the year, he was gone from WCW for good. Reed spent the next few years wrestling in smaller promotions. In the USWA, he rekindled his rivalry with Junkyard Dog and even won the Unified World Heavyweight Championship. However, his reign lasted only a week before he lost the belt to Todd Champion. By 1994, he was in the dying days of the Global Wrestling Federation, where he won the North American Championship, but lost it shortly after to gentleman Chris Adams. Though he continued wrestling on the independent scene, Reed had his sights set on something else, competing in rodeo circuits in Kansas City. He balanced wrestling with his rodeo commitments, eventually joining Harley Race's WLW promotion. There, he won the WLW Heavyweight Championship in 2001 and held it for nearly a year before losing it in early 2002. That seemed to mark the end of his career, and he quietly retired. However, in 2005, Reed made a surprise return, wrestling in Mid-States Wrestling and even winning their heavyweight championship. He also participated in the Legends of Wrestling Tour in 2006. His last big appearance came in 2007 when he made a brief cameo on WWE SmackDown during a segment involving his former manager Theodore Long. His final match took place on May 18, 2013, when he teamed with Bob Orton Jr. in a losing effort against Flash Flanagan and Ron Powers at SICW in East Carondelet, Illinois. After that, he stepped away from the ring for good, closing the book on a career that saw him wrestle in nearly every major promotion. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more.